Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Euro Trade. Let's get our coffees in. Okay, if you're here for the first time, welcome. My name is Market Stalker D, aka Deeyana Angelo. I've been trading for 18 years. 13 years out of that, I have been in prop trading in one capacity or another. And I'm a commodities trader. I'm not an equities trader. I specialize in slightly weirder products that you don't hear about that often. Things like gasoline futures, crude oil, precious metals, copper, platinum. And yes, DAX, but we still don't have DAX. All right, let's see what's going on with copper. Now, copper is printing fifth overlapping value day. So on the daily chart, we have this whole consolidation area, distributing area, however you want to call it. I'm not really in favor of continued longs here, primarily because of those 5 days of overlapping values. So in order for me to go long, we either need to sell off again like we did during Asia, or we need to definitely burst outside of this whole structure and then perhaps maybe some kind of a sustained auction. Until that happens, I am still looking for shorts. Now, yesterday I did manage to jab some trades in on the short side, but mainly the profit. How can let me move myself? The profit came from natural gas, bit of YM, and yes, a copper trade as well. So we're going to see what they want to do with this. Now, the first step is to smash through the initial balance. Like, without that, I don't really want to be getting involved. There's a little bit of interest at 92.60. It's not like the biggest amount of orders, but they seem to be much bigger than anything around. So if you see on the dome, on the main HG contract, all of the rest of them, that's sort of like 6, 3, 4, 5, 7, and then at 60, there's 22 orders, right? So my guess is they are going to hunt that first before they do anything else. And I want to wait for that. Just above this whole structure, I do have the average session range high for the London session. It is a shortened London session because I cut off that calculation as soon as we start COMEX. So it's literally just the range that London session for this time of day does on average. And it represents a pretty decent area to run a mean reversion trade, or in this case, it would be maybe a failed auction of some sort as well. So yeah, let's sit and wait. Not much to do yet. I am still a little bit short biased, but we'll see how it goes. Probably we'll start on 5 micros because this is not the strongest setup. We have some conflicting things. We open inside value, pushed outside, and still struggling and starting to create inside bars. If it's going to really break out, you don't really want to see that. You want to see commitment and continuous move in the same direction that keeps creating higher highs. Now, we don't have that because the previous 30 minutes has failed to create a higher high. So all of this is a little bit iffy with an ick factor. So we need to sit and wait. There are some options levels further down. So we have a gamma wall at 91. We also have high volume area from the 0 DTE options. If we manage to get back through that, it can sometimes act as an accelerator, the HVLs, because at that point you're kind of flipping gamma exposure to the opposite side. So if you were in a slightly quieter day, that can act as an accelerator, and vice versa. If you were in some crazy day, if you run into an HVL, can actually prompt the market makers to just kind of chill out and slow down. So that's kind of the simplest explanation of what those levels do. But yeah, at the moment I don't have a clear picture. Maybe if we, like I said, if we smash through the Asia high, then reverse, that could be a bit of a Frankfurt fake out play, but it's getting a little bit too late for that setup because it has a time component attached to it as well. So, as Hogue likes to say, hands on our butt, and we wait. Now, while I wait, let me scan through some of the other markets to see whether we can find any opportunities elsewhere. YM could be bouncing from the VWAP, still not really extending anywhere, but generally just looking slightly bullish. We did have a nice short squeeze last night during power hour. Did that start earlier? I think it started a little bit earlier. So it started for the time of day that I refer to as a day range fill. And guess what? It filled the range. Hence the name, right? Yeah, not a lot of volume here. I don't like to do breakout trades and kind of like continuation trades if that is not supported by volume. So that's not looking great either. Let's move on. Now, natural gas typically goes one way for London and then another way for NYMEX. But that tends to happen a little bit later in the day. Typically, you start to see some volume coming in on natty gas around 11 o'clock my time, so it's a bit too early. I was in on this, didn't get this entire move, but I did get like 3R, so I managed to get a good chunk out of it. I was pretty happy with that. Natural gas is a beast. If you get it wrong, it can rip your face off in 3.5 seconds. But it's kind of manageable on a 35 tick stop, which is kind of interesting because throughout this whole tariffs business, I would say natural gas is one of the products that is still quite normal. Like, I haven't seen it completely change personality, whereas some of the other things like, NASDAQ, copper, gold, they've all had a bit of a personality transplant where they suddenly got super, super volatile. But, nat gas is, if it's moving, it's volatile anyway. So, it's no news there. What else can we look at? Gold has been a fickle beast. Gold is still inside like hugely massive candle ranges. ATR, even at the moment, is considered, a slightly slower session. Even gold is like 92 ticks ATR, and that's measured across the last 14 candles. Let me change that to 9, because I like to use ATR on 9. What does that do? Not much. It's still like 88 ticks. That's crazy. That's the average. So what is ATR? It's an average candle range across 9 periods. And sometimes I look at that to establish a position intra candle. So if I'm looking at a short and we have a big move up in the same direction, let's say we hit VWAP at that point, I usually use that ATR as my entry, so I use it in a bit of a different way to most people. Whereas ADR and ASR I use as my exhaustion points, and those are calculated through multi-day averages. They're kind of like, think about them as quantitative extremes. That's one way. And then another way would be a statistical average of the expected move, so therefore I call them my exhaustion zones. MJ Lucas says, I love your charts. What do you use, and is it a premium package? This is just native Topstep X, which is basically Project X. But I actually have a different set of charts where I drag all of this data from, and they are mine. So we have a software development company. This is what they normally look like. So let me just... So yeah, I have the profile. I can very easily switch on the volume profile as well. This is a 4 weeks worth. I can very easily see where the value areas are as well. I can easily switch through different sessions. I can switch on supply and demand levels and multiple time frames, 1 over. So, you know, it just kind of allows me to streamline my process a little bit better, or a lot better. It used to take me, like before I had the software development company, I used to spend like 3 hours plotting all of these and getting you know, time series data into Excel, and then getting all of the, you know, various pieces of information that I needed. And then back in 2014, 2015, I decided to seek help from a software architect who was my friend at the time, and he worked for Barclays Capital. So eventually he ended up buying out my company, and we created some businesses together. So that's where Blotech indicators, which is what you just saw, came from. Now, I know that there's rumors that API access is coming to TopstepX. We might create like an ADR indicator, my DR indicator on there. But we are also working on translating all of the stuff that we currently have on another platform into NinjaTrader, which still seems to be, you know, it's pretty popular. I mean, I'm not super partial to any particular platform, and I sort of like keep a pulse on all of them. You know, I want to know which platform is doing what. But yeah, so we all have our preferences, and at the moment, people seem to quite like TradingView and NinjaTrader. Now, TradingView, for me, it has slightly limited functionalities. So some of the slightly more difficult side of things, like for example, backtest directly on the chart with just levels, you can't do this sort of optimization without serious lags. And then you have to, you know, do a rain dance to actually make everything look super smooth. But yeah, anyways, let's stop nerding out, because I'm sure I'm going to be scaring some people off if I start going into that side of things. What do I think of Platinum's weekly range? Wizard TP wants to know. You know what? I'm finding Platinum is not moving all that much. Like, it sort of moves, but in a haphazard way. What's going on with my voice? And this is what I mean. So weekly range, I've got some random stuff here. So we are coming up to the weekly supply, obviously. So that's a swing extreme. And, you know, gun to the head, what should happen here? If this was just an isolated view, I would say, I mean, you can see these markers that I put on whenever I do a trade. I haven't done a Platinum trade in like 2.5 weeks or so. So I would say shorts, right? And I would say that we maybe have a bit of a downtrend, seeing how we smashed through the lows here and then, you know, went into a pullback. But when I look at the daily chart, like, look at this mess. See what I mean? It's like nothing, wham, nothing. And it, you know, when it looks like this, I don't have a problem trading it. But as soon as it starts to do these like dojis intraday, then kind of inside bar, but not committal, that I don't feel like those are the easiest trades. I'm very selective on what I want to see. So until we kind of make up our minds, I feel that Platinum is kind of taken a back seat to all of this tariff side of things. So, you know, gold is on a massive bull run. Copper is on a massive bull run. Equities are falling out of bed. You know, everything is kind of like crude oil being weird, right? Crude oil going all the way up and faking everybody out, thinking it's breaking out, and they go, and then it smashes all the way back down. not touching that thing yet, because it does that, right? But yeah, platinum kind of just on the sidelines, sort of like a, like a third wheel to the whole tariffs thing. It's like, yeah, guys, what's happening? I don't know. I'm just going to sit over here and observe. So yeah, it's been a little bit weird to me, and I've been staying away from platinum for now until that changes. So I have no particular opinion on platinum, if I'm going to be honest. I'm just observing and waiting for some better conditions. So yeah. Mo says, morning D, can I ask how you structure your trading week? Do you only trade certain hours and work towards a daily, weekly profit? I don't work towards any targets. So I hate monetary targets, whether they are daily targets or weekly targets. I feel that they derail more people than they help. Some people are good with them, but they are in the minority. Just from the coaching side of things, whenever we say, all right, so let's aim for, arbitrary 500 a day, they will derail the accounts. Most people will derail their accounts chasing the 500. So it's almost like as if the monetary goal erases your risk management side, and then you're just chasing a goal. So that's a bad thing. But I will take what. So here's the thing. I prefer to think of limiting your trading and reaching a goal as reaching a certain number of trades per day, and then whatever happens in those n number of trades, that's your day, right? Having said that, I do, because I have to trade through like multiple sessions, right? So I do these streams, and then I also trade pretty actively during the COMEX session. Pretty actively in these terms means like I pop in 3 to 5 trades per session, effectively. And COMEX seems to be, COMEX, NYMEX, and obviously NYSE, they seem to be, obviously they offer more opportunities because the products that we have here are most active during those times of day. So I will kind of pop in maybe 2 trades in copper. I might try 1 or 2 trades in our bob, and then I might try 2 or 3 trades in YM, and then that's it, right? So if I'm experiencing a day where the market is giving me pretty smooth setups, I will only do like between 1 and 3 trades, right? So let's say I get a massive copper trade that I'm kind of stalking. So I'm looking for this big swing reversal on copper because of this distribution that we have on the large time frames on the daily. And let's say that I pop in a a copper trade short, and it rewards me by like giving me 400 ticks, and I hold it for 4 hours or something on 2 lots. I'm then done, right? So I'm not going to be going, ooh, I need more. Where can I get more dopamine? Can you please point me in the right direction where I can get my next fix? I'm actually not a, adrenaline junkie where I'm just looking for more trades every day. I will trade more if the day calls for it, but at the same time, if I've done 10 trades on the day, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work. But I guess I'm a little bit different at this point after nearly 2 decades of doing this, where I'm generally quite selective, and I do have the times of day. So I have a concept called time of day as a level, okay? That means that a particular time of day carries a certain statistical probability of doing a particular behavior, okay? For crude oil, back in the day, before we had the crude oil menopause last year, we had times when basically you would have the period between 9 a.m. Central and 10:30 a.m. Central. So basically, the time between the Forex option NY cut expiry and the euro close, you would usually get a pretty severe reversal during that time, and it would bring you like 70 ticks with ease, right? Now, the problem that I have with crude oil these days is that back in the day, it would tell you when you were clearly wrong very quickly. But then it would also, like I was just talking to Coach Hoop yesterday, because me and him are trading buddies, and we talk like, at least 2-3 times a week, sometimes even every day. And he used to trade crude oil as well. We know each other from the days of Squawk Radio, when Topstep was only doing Squawk Radio like 10 years ago. And I was a part of that. He had his own segment. I was more of a guest back then because I was, new to Topstep 10 years ago. And yes, I've been with Topstep on and off for 10 years in some shape or form. And so we were talking about how crude oil would tell you you're wrong, but then it would also offer you the opportunity to get back in on the right side and reward you for it. That's disappeared, okay? So that no longer exists in crude oil. It's like you might get an outlier day where it does go to like 250, 300 ticks, maybe even $4 per day. But generally, it's, on most days, it's stuck in this like 130 tick weirdness. That's why I'm calling it a menopause. Like crude oil is like, I've had enough. I'm old. I've dried up. So yeah. And I've looked to other products. I sometimes trade RBOB. That's kind of like my replacement for crude oil. But, copper on the CME products and, generally things that move and that we have on Topstep. It's a pretty tasty trade, but again, in rollover, it does these sort of days where you have more incidence of neutral days than usual. So when I'm looking at my day, I do section it into what I call the day trading time zones. Each of those time zones carries a particular behavior and an assumption based on statistical things that I've observed over the last 18 years. And then I will look for what levels we have there. So I almost got to do things in reverse. Time of day first, then level, then price action, right? Now, London is a bit sketchy when it comes to that. On DAX, we have some better behaviors because this is like, DAX is London specific. It trades, starts in Eurex, very, very popular product for the London session. Whenever I worked for like a London prop firm, DAX, Bund, those were very, very popular things. And then back in the day it was Euro-dollar as well, but, that seems to have taken a back seat as well. So, markets change, markets like fluctuate and whatever, but if you can find, again, this is probably me talking from the point of view of maybe slight expert blindness, but the way I look at it, every part of the day has its own product. So for me, on Topstep, it's copper, right? And then up until about 11 o'clock, I will look at mainly copper, sometimes platinum if it's like trending and stuff, but for now it's been copper, obviously. And then from 11 o'clock, I start looking at natural gas and copper because they can both give me a trade. And if I haven't done particularly well in copper, like let's say yesterday I got smacked in the face a couple of times trying a copper trade, natural gas in that sort of overlap section gives me another trade. And after that, whatever happens with those 3 trades in the morning, I'm done for the morning. Then I have a break. Sometimes I have a nap. Other times I walk my dogs. Then I come back after the initial balance, at least for COMEX, has set. But very frequently, I will have a big break and only come back around sort of 3:30 p.m. my time. Now that will be 9:30 a.m. Central, right? That's when I will be looking for another setup. And typically that will either be RBOB. It used to be gold when it was a little bit less crazy as well. But generally I will still stick to the assumption that at that point we might get either a reversal or an acceleration of whatever we've been doing already. It depends on the product. Copper, very directional. Okay, so if we've already broken out to one side, I might look for a pullback and then trade in the same direction. And sometimes looking for that trade can take 2 hours. It can take all the way to like euro close before I'm like, right, we actually have a setup here. And then once that's done, I have another break. So I take a lot of naps. And usually I will either, go and rest up, I will get some oxygen in me. maybe another shorter nap, maybe some yoga nidra to reset my brain. And then from about 6 p.m. my time, which is 12 p.m. Central, I will then focus more of my effort simply on RBOB and or equities. So these days it's like YM. I quite like the way YM moves. Back in the day like last year, I was probably doing more ES than YM. And then I would look for setups there. But again, I typically look for reversals in and around that last part. I'm very big on like kind of settlement fades. That's been like my bread and butter for a long, long time in all these years. And it is a juicy trade. You get to like an hour or half an hour before settlement, and some products just love to turn around. And that's a statistically highly probable. Okay, let's take some coffee and then start that again. Settlement fade playbook is a statistically highly probable trade across most products. Some products like equities, they have the MOC, the last 10 minutes of nonsense. So for me, the later it gets in the day, the easier it is for me to read what's going on. I know that for some people, they lose the plot the longer the day goes on. But for me, I find that I make most of my mistakes very early. So again, I do everything the opposite way. I don't know whether it's because I'm a lefty, whether my brain just works in a reverse way somehow. But yeah, people have a problem with cutting losses. People have a problem with holding trades long for a long time. I don't have a problem with that. People have a problem, like if you see some of these average win durations just keep getting bigger and bigger. So my average win duration has now climbed up to 99 minutes. Average trade is 82 minutes. So, I'm not somebody who has a problem holding trades, And then, we have people who are having problems cutting losses, and they keep, extending the stop or adding on to things willy-nilly. Whenever I add onto a losing trade, that's basically adding it to an MAE, maximum adverse excursion point, that I've observed before. So and then if that's wrong too, I have no problem cutting that trade. And yet people are like, no, I'm wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I have no problem being wrong. I'm wrong a lot, guys. I'm wrong a lot, and I have zero ego over that. Settlement trade, that's right. Pi, yes, yesterday's late ES reversal. Now, the ES reversals are, they used to be, even more juicy, but these days, MOC seems to be a little bit of a hit and miss affair. However, I already start looking for that reversal about 90 minutes before we actually get into the last hour. And then if there's a continuation of that move, that's great. If it's all just wow, then it's fine as well. But, usually it's just going to stay quite like range bound if there's nothing going on. And obviously certain times of the month are also important, right? Not just for ladies, but also also for the markets, because you have things like option expiries. Every third Friday of the month, you will get some pretty crazy moves on equities because of that. But also, I would like to mention that crude oil and RBOB have bi-weekly option expiries now. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays in particular, for some reason they seem to be bigger. If you see a trending move on crude oil or RBOB, which is gasoline futures, and you have single prints on the day, don't try and fade that. That's just option expiries going mad, and it's just not worth it. Statistically, Thursdays now, I'm not going to say it never happens or it never fades into settlement on Thursdays, but in certain conditions, when you see that big trending move, it's less of a chance that we're going to go into a day range fill fade into settlement. So yeah, that's basically the gist of what I do. So very time-based related. Pi also said, why are London Open ES trash nowadays? Used to be liquid. Yeah, it's one of those things where markets change. They go through, through periods of higher volatility, higher liquidity. Then they settle. I'm a huge proponent of seasonality. Seasonal market moves are also a thing, even if we have equities and they are supposed to be always moving, but in my experience, that's not quite always the case. So I'm going to go down to a 2-minute chart here on copper. Big contract here, but I will, if I find any sort of a setup, which I'm not finding yet, I will be popping in a 5 micro trade. Because again, if I lose, because London has been a little bit sketchy recently, and to be honest, copper is coming off a rollover as well. It's almost done. I think it's almost done. We're just looking at what it was doing. Let's have a look at quotes. Yeah, I mean, it's almost done. We still have 340 people stuck in May, probably wondering, whoa, where is everybody? I'm all alone. And then someone who's either not looking at, like, I don't know what these people are doing. Like, usually if you're going to trade I would think that these 63 people are not aware that we rolled into July. They're like, what? Why is it not moving? Why is the spread ginormous? Because we're all in July, right? Come join the party. So yeah, it's almost done, the rollover. So we also have end of the month. That's usually fun. End of the month can bring portfolio rebalancing into the mix as well. So just be mindful of that. Trading Nickel says, sorry, I can't remember the name of the last streamer. Aaron is his name. Aaron Luce. He said the same thing, to not set daily earning goals because you can't tell. Yeah, I fully agree with Aaron. I sometimes wake up early. Well, actually, that's a lie. Sometimes my dogs wake me up early. They're like, let us out. So yeah, I do watch Aaron's show. You should listen to him. He talks a lot of sense. And I think most of us who have been at this for, a hot minute, we're all on the same page. We've all had some very hard lessons from the market. And, chasing goals, especially monetary, is like, not a good thing. So, yeah, monetary goals never worked for me. I always found, a couple of times in my life, not very frequently, but I got to like 800 on the day, and I'm like, if I could just get 200. But then I thought to myself, yo, you're chasing like $200 and risking 800. And yet, like, let's say you want to make the $1,000, which is completely arbitrary, right? Completely arbitrary. And then I'm looking at the market. I'm like, there's no opportunities here. So now I want to eke out $200 and potentially lose more and then be a complete muppet doing that. Negative risk reward, right? Chasing 200, risking 800. I already have 800. Why would I be chasing 200? And then since I had that little epiphany, which is very logical, right? It's like you're working with a negative risk reward. But since I had that little epiphany probably about, 15 years ago, I was like, yeah, we'll not be doing that. I have not felt the need to chase. If I make $2,000, I make $2,000. If I make 1.8, that's fine. If I make 400, perfectly happy with that too. It's like you just don't know what the market is going to give you. So, I'm very open to what sort of a day we're going to have. And in my mind, there's no goal to reach. But I will tell you, if I get close to $2,000, especially on newer sort of accounts and stuff, which would be the case for most of you, if I get to 1.8, I'm walking away. I don't even lock it up on a lot of the days, sometimes find it difficult to lock it up at like 400 profit, right? But if I've, and then I will, resort to the lockout button. But if I've kind of made a decent day, and for me a decent day is anything sort of over 1.5k, it's pretty tasty. I would just walk away, and I have no desire to look at the charts. So I don't know, people. This desire to keep clicking buttons, that's something else. That's not, like, do you think that you're going to make all of the money that you need today? Are you maybe trading from like thinking about your debts or something? Oh, I could pay off that credit card. Do you think that's going to happen today? Like, what exactly goes through your heads? And I think that's a part of the introspection that you need to have with yourself. Or, if you were up 600 and you blow it up chasing $1,000 or an extra 100. Like, why? If you had 600 in your pocket. I think Eddie says it very well. Like, if somebody walks up to you and hands you over $600, are you immediately going to go and spend it? Or are you going to put it aside and go, oh, that's nice, and maybe get like a nice lunch, but not spend all of it? Like, how would you behave in a real life situation if you suddenly came into $1,000, 600, 200, 400, even $100, right? How do you behave with that money? So I think maybe exploring that part of you could be what's driving some of your decisions as a trader. But, I know that some people have compulsive behaviors away from trading. And I love how Jerome D said it. Trading is not gambling, but it can lead to gambling behaviors. And that's like so true. I personally don't have a single gambling bone in my body. I got married in Vegas. We were there for like a week. Not once did I have a desire to like, oh yeah, I'll just go and do a bit of gambling. To me, it's like so similar to what we do here, probabilities, random distribution of probabilities. And I don't find it restful. For me, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to sit by the pool. I'm very boring when I go on holidays or vacations, as you guys like to call it. How is micro Bitcoin looking? Same as equities, actually, bizarrely. Yesterday when I was talking to Hoop, we had a little look-see. And honestly, to me, it looks like it's back to tracking what equities are doing. So let's see. D making crow noises again. Twinsies? Can we say twinsies? I'd say fraternal, but twinsies. I mean, come on. It's a very similar chart. So if you're already trading equities, unless there's something specifically you like about Bitcoin, I don't feel you're diversifying, especially if you're running positions in the same two products. It's like, if you're running the Bitcoin long and ES long, to me, you're just doubling up on exposure. Here's where we're trading multiple products at the same time. Doesn't even come into the thought of somebody who only trades ES or only trades NQ. There is such a thing as double and triple exposure. People are like, ooh, Bitcoin's going long, let's go long. Ooh, ES is looking long, I'm long ES. Ooh, YM and RTY. And then they're like quarter exposure, 4 times as much size on effectively correlated assets. And you're like, that's going to go wrong. Very wrong. It's like me being long crude oil and me being long gasoline futures. It's like, it's effectively the same product with a little bit of a difference in speed. So it's like, there is a thing called the crack spread, CRK spread, that banks on that difference between heating oil, crude oil, and gasoline. But that's like over, it's not necessarily an intraday trade, you know, that takes a long time to come to fruition. So yeah, twinsies, if you're looking at equities and micro Bitcoin, to me, they look pretty bloody similar. So, but hey, what do I know? Stefan says, my girlfriend says I'm wrong all the time, so I take all aggression out on the market. It should not tell me I'm wrong also. That's funny. Yeah, you need to check that ego at the door, man. So yes, the ego problem. Maybe go do some exercise, you know. Try that. Go lift some weights. Then come to trade. Okay, let's have a look at more questions. What are your signals to get into a settlement fade play? It's a very good question. Time of day being one of them. So at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned time of day as a level. So I usually have an assumption that we're going to fade something, right? If I have a strong level there, that will increase my sentiment. So for example, RBOB yesterday. Let me see if I still have the markers from that. I did go into a long RBOB trade yesterday. That was this. I don't have the markers. Let me just remind myself where that was. Maybe, just maybe I have a marker on my other platform. Other platform, yes. No, I did not put the marker there either. But basically I used converted crude oil levels for this, and it was showing me there was like a put support somewhere around, was it 0840, so 20840 or something. It was just around this area. And if I go back in time, you will also see we had the average session range low that was exhausted at the same point. So that kind of gave me a little bit more conviction. Now, these sorts of day range fill trades, they're not going to bring you like a gazillion ticks on gold or on RBOB. They're pretty much good for a 1 hour move, whatever that is for you. So for me, that's 85 ticks on RBOB, 35 to 40 on crude oil. So don't expect there's going to be like some kind of a smashy trade, because it only lasts like maybe an hour. So the thing that got me into this was looking at Bookmap, actually, and then seeing that we're starting to get some wicks around the average session range low and that put support area. And then what I was looking for was a microstructure trend change on Bookmap. So it was like an order flow thing. And then they started plowing in with some volume. The bubbles turned to aggressive buying, and the bubbles got bigger. So volume was coming in. It's a very good visualization tool, but some people find that it's too much. So that was, for example, that was the trade that I did. That was very, very day range fill like. You know, that's my settlement fade play. Supported by an options level and the fact that we exhausted the quantitative extreme at about the same time, when I'm expecting a reversal, which on RBOB is 6:30 p.m. my time. So if you have a strong level and you can see the price changing microstructure and holding, that increases the confidence in the trade. So time of day, expectation of the direction. So time of day is coming into settlement time. Expectation of direction, reversal, right? Is there any strong level that can act as a stopping point? So is there VWAP? Sometimes it's VWAP, right? is there for me. It's an options level. How strong is the options level? Is it like a random gex level? Like gex 10, it's like, whoopee, that's probably not going to work, right? But if it's like two things from two different concepts, quantitative extreme and a put support where a bunch of put strikes are located, that's going to be less likely to just bleed through. And even if it doesn't work, just the sheer speed bump that we have there is going to allow me time to decide whether I want to stay in it or not. So hopefully that clarifies things a little bit more. How did you encounter that fear of placing in a trade and fear of losing money in a trade after failing again and again? How did I encounter? You mean how did I'm guessing English is not your first language, neither is mine, but you know, at least I make an effort. Sorry. No, I'm joking. So I think you mean, how did you conquer the fear of placing a trade and losing money in a trade? So you say failing again and again and again. So there's no failing again and again. I would lose one trade, but then the next one makes me money. So this is why, you know, but I have a very high risk reward. So, you know, even when my accuracy drops down, I will still every 2-3 days get like a 2 or 3 hour trade, right? And then sometimes in a day I might lose one, and then I lose a partial one because I like to cut. If the market gives me an opportunity, I will cut the trade early. So I actually have less of a loss while still maintaining 2R multiples as a default target. So if you lose, let's do some math, right? If you cut your trade early, and let's say that you're risking 100, right? Just keep it super simple, to get 200 net. So your stop loss is 100, and you want 2R multiples of the initial 1R risk taken to be as your final target or your default target. Sometimes, you know, you can extend that if the conditions are right, but again, that's a can of worms in itself. When are the conditions right? Well, for example, we have 5 days of overlapping values on copper. So if I do get into my short trade at some point in the next 2 weeks, that's going to be a massive trade, right? Because I've seen that happen before. If I don't get in it, I can get a good chunk of it, and it's still going to be 2R. But if I get the big one, sometimes those are 5 and 6R trades, right? But let's say that you're risking 100 to get 200, but you notice at about, you know, 20 or 30 tick drawdown. So let's say you are now staring at the market dipping into a stop, right, slowly. But it's only dipping like by a third, and you don't like the microstructure that you're seeing. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So you actually exit the trade, and let's say you exit the trade by $70, so minus $70, right? So instead of minus 100, now your loss is minus 70. Then the next trade you enter, yes, you're still risking, you know, the same 100, but this time it goes to 2R multiples. So net, if you are ballpark risking 70 because of the early exit to gain 200, what does that do to your risk reward? It improves it, right? It improves your risk reward. So instead of like 2R multiples, you might get 2.3, you might get 2.5, you might get 2.8 if you're just like, you know, actually I was looking for a momentum trade and this dipped against me by $30. You exit. But the next one reaches 2R. So net, your average win versus your average loss ratio is improved. But unless you're an advanced trader, you're probably exiting trades early for no reason whatsoever. Now for me, when my trade breaks down, it just bloody breaks down. I'm outright wrong, okay? This is why I allow it to go into, you know, my MAE point, which is 18 to 22 ticks on my standard stop loss. But let's say that it's about 60 to 70% of drawdown where my usual MAE is on a lot of trades. But that doesn't scare me. So if you are scared, it means that you're not trading from a data point, you're trading from emotions. That needs to improve. So you need to watch Neuro Wednesdays that we do here with Jerome. This is a new thing that we're doing on Wednesdays. Jerome is a doctor of neuroscience, and he tells us how our brains work. He's also one of the top traders at Topstep, so he connects everything to trading, even though it's neuroscience, right? But he tells you about his experiences, what he struggled with as well, and then he tells you why things are happening. He's very good at calming himself because of his vast knowledge about how the brain works. And he tells you about the prefrontal cortex. It tells you about the limbic system. And really, as a trader, the levels are the easy part. What happens between the keyboard and chair, also widely known with IT people as PBKC error, problem between keyboard and chair, that is the real secret, right? So I can give the same level to 100 different people and I'll get 100 different results. Okay? So there's more to it. You trade from your life experience. I trade from my life experience. They are generally very, very different, right? I grew up in Yugoslavia, war-torn country, but I grew up in a really well-off family as a daughter of a Yugoslavian rock star. You know, I probably have some very, very different beliefs about money, right? And then I had the dad who was teaching me to be mindful of cash and mindful of how I spend things. So since very early age, I was always putting things aside. Even like I would get allowance, I would put some of it aside. And then back when I was growing up in Serbia in the 1990s, we used to have like black market forex exchange, which is basically just a bloke out on the street going foreign currencies. So what I used to do on my breaks when I was at school, I was a trader even back then, even though I didn't know it. So I worked out that the hyperinflation we were experiencing can actually mean that if I flip something to Deutschmarks and then I wait for the hyperinflation, and it was happening in a day, it was ridiculous. You would go to buy a loaf of bread in the morning and there would be like, there would be 100 million dinars. And then you come back in the afternoon, that same loaf has been hyperinflated to like 2 billion dinars. And how they solved it in the end, they lopped off some zeros and we started again. But yeah, the hyperinflation, this is not very well known, but Serbia had one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in the world. I actually had an argument with my husband over this because he knows a lot about economics. He has a banking background. And I said, no, it was another country. And then he cited a more well-known, I think it was it Germany and then Nigeria? And then I said, no, we were I lived through this. I'm telling you that. So he went and Googled it and he's like, oh my God, you're right. That's insane. And I'm like, that was my childhood. I was like 12, 13. So what I worked out was that if I, before school, get up to these dodgy blokes and I go, hey, can I exchange, 50 Deutschmarks, because it was Deutschmarks back then. God, I'm so old. And, you would get 50 Deutschmarks, hold on to it, maybe sometimes even for a couple of days, and then exchange it into dinars. You could buy so much stuff with it. And I worked that out very early on. I didn't know it was trading. I just thought I was taking, advantage of a situation. Never even occurred to me that what I was doing was trading, right? Only years after when I got into this, my mom said to me, she said, do you remember when you used to exchange your pocket money for for Deutschmarks and then you always had money? And I'm like, oh yeah, holy crap, I was trading back then. But yeah, it wasn't like any levels or anything. It was just literally finding commonalities of macro situations. So it was a fundamental situation of hyperinflation and me taking advantage of that. So there you go. There's a fun story. Do with it whatever you like. Timothy Williams, this is kind of an offbeat question. If you reference the VWAP, is it worth putting a new one on the US markets open, or does the standard VWAP keep up? So I will be honest with you, whenever there's a range-bound day, that is the only time that I would feel the need to put the session VWAP on. Why? Because usually it's in the middle. And then what I aim to do is to, and by the way, I still dislike range-bound days. I'm not, you know, you have somebody like Dolby, he loves it. I'm like, range-bound day, now I have to do work. Damn it. Because range-bound days, they typically they do a lot of stop runs, right? So let's assume, let's have a look at YM, for example. Let's change this to YM. 30 minutes. Okay, so we can say that maybe these are range-bound conditions, right? Let's put a rectangle. Still in those, look how copper is just not bloody moving today. I'm not sure I'm going to get in a trade today. Yeah, hasn't even extended. This is a bad sign. It hasn't even extended the initial bounce. What do we have? Just one thing. I know I'm a bit ADD at the moment, but I'm just like... So we got jolts. Nah, that's not really relevant for copper. GDP. CPI, German... PMI, so really until Thursday, yeah, maybe the end of the month is going to move this thing, but yeah, for now this is very, very quiet, so I'm going to be hands on my butt for a long time. Anyways, let's get back to session VWAP versus Globex VWAP. So when you have a range-bound day, let's imagine this is the initial balance. Now, for me, a range-bound day will be only characterized by the fact that you extend the initial balance both sides, or some of the more rare occasions where you don't extend the initial balance at all, known as a non-trend day in profile. But I prefer it when they extend it. So what do you expect on a range-bound day? Well, you expect that people who are not really very well versed in trading, they will be putting their stops like this, right? Or they will be entering, so this is actually not too bad. But what tends to happen is that the market makers and all the algos know that retail likes to put their stops right at the top of the previous high. And then they smash through that and then reverse. So my play is to mark off where the session high and session low are. And then I sit and wait, right? Sometimes for hours. I sit and wait until they smash through it, and then I fade them. Evil D. Why? Because that's the common play. That is the expected thing. So if you have something that is rotational and range bound, imagine that you have an elastic band. Now, I have no elastic bands here because I'm all packed up to move following Friday out of this house because we sold it. And, okay, I have a makeup band, which is kind of similar. Can you see that? Let me see. All right. So if you have a band that is stretched both sides, so you extended this side, you extended this side. Nobody has power, right? So they're like, yeah, we're pulling. So what happens if this one side lets go? We rotate back the other way. However, sometimes we rotate to the middle, right? So for me, session VWAP is a target on range-bound days. Okay? Whatever we do. The only time I would go, oh, actually, no, now I'm going to change my mind, I'm going to do a breakout trade, is if we've already broken through an area, so we've broken through the session high or a low and left single prints, despite of the neutral day. Okay? That is the only time I'll be like, is this a breakaway? Let me see what else is happening and whether we're breaking through some options levels, for example. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But other than that, for me, Globex VWAP is a measure of how we're doing, right? Are we next to it? Do we move away from it? Is that conducive to any of my hypos? And then if we're super far away from it, are we in a trending day already, like an outlier day? We're just keeps going, like a zombie rally on equities? Or is this the opportunity for mean reversion? And to me, anytime we're about 0.4 up to 1% distance from Globex VWAP, that's a possibility for fishing for mean reversion at some point. Especially if my average ranges have been reactive, meaning that they caused the price to slow down, like on that RBOB trade. And then I basically just ran it up to VWAP. That was the trade, right? But it was Globex VWAP. In all other situations, Globex VWAP for me personally, the way I trade, more than enough. But like I said, range bound day, yeah, we can talk about using session VWAP as target. I don't think it works particularly well on most other days, and every level that I use, I actually require it to have a frequency of becoming important as a stopping point more often than not. Does that make sense? This bloody copper, now it's going for Asian high. Asian high? Asia high. I see the best loser wins has had a cup of coffee or a line of something, because you're just you're very angry today, man. Go run or something. You know, anger is not a good thing in trading. Mo says, D, you're clearly a successful person with loads going on. What's your motivation for being a part of TopstepTV with everything else you're juggling? I'm not juggling that many things, mate. In fact, I lead a pretty boring life. I have a chronic illness, so let's repeat that again. I had a vaccine injury in December 2021, and then already for 2 years before then, I ended up with digestive issues that, as a result of long COVID, so I got the initial strain of the alpha strain of COVID, and it didn't affect me much. Like, I was only like coughing for a bit. I didn't even have a fever. And then I started waking up with nausea. It took me probably 8 months to figure out that that I cannot digest chicken and beef, which I've successfully digested for full 40 years up until that point. And so yeah, that was the first start of some health troubles. Up until then, I was an athlete. I did like 5 to 6 days of bodybuilding, you know, at least 90 minutes at the gym. And then if I was preparing for a fitness competition, it was like up to 4 hours at the gym. Obviously, you can't keep that up for a very long time. And then 8 months into it, I noticed that I'm just constantly nauseous. Like, I would eat a bit of meat, I would be very sick for a few days. So I'm like, what's going on here? I basically developed an meat intolerance for certain proteins, and it was like the most common proteins. So that took a while to figure out. So then for the next 2 years, I was like, oh, great. Then I went for a couple of vaccines. That was like Pfizer. Absolutely fine. It actually improved whatever was going on with my stomach. So I thought, excellent, this is like working to, you know, figure out. So I was very pro vaccines, and I probably still am in certain cases, but yeah, copper. Why are you breaking out to the outside, man? Yeah, and then I had December 2021 came, and it was like maybe 3-4 months since I received the second dosage. And my dad got sick. He broke his hip, had a surgery, and he was living in a different country. And then we also had puppies. We had the lovely bastards we have now. My 6 extra dogs on top of the 2 that I already had. And, you know, it was very clear that I wanted to be healthy, that I maybe had to go and visit my dad. And at that time, you couldn't get on a plane unless you were fully vaccinated if you were eligible. Now, Boris Johnson told us if you've had the vaccine within 3 months, you're eligible, because he wanted to save Christmas, right? So I went and did the third booster, and within 24 hours, I get a rash here. Thought it was a rash. Turned out it was shingles. So obviously as a child I had chickenpox. We all had that virus inside of us. And it was an atypical presentation because it first appeared on my neck. The doctors wouldn't believe me. They wouldn't see me either. They were just like, that doesn't happen. You're only 41, whatever it was at that point. And I'm like 40-year-old people can get shingles. Like, what the hell? And she kept talking over me as well. It was like horrible. Just totally gaslighting me into like thinking that nothing's wrong. So anyways, the atypical presentation of shingles was that it migrated down to my vagus nerve. So my vagus nerve got affected. And then it just made a mess literally within 3 days. I felt like my body was on fire. And they didn't give me any medications up until like two weeks later. And by then, the third doctor that finally asked for photos said, yeah, it's bad sign, it's shingles. And by then I was in so much pain. It was like too late, right? But they still put me on a very, very high dosage of one of those antiviral meds. So I went on that. It was 6 months before my body stopped creating lesions. 6 months. So my immune system obviously just got, like, excuse my French, but fucked up. Like, there's no other way to say it. Sorry for the F-bomb. And now 3 months into that, so in and around sort of March, April, I started getting super tired. I'm talking tired so much that I can't hold my head up, like a baby, right? Like flopping down. So I was like, what is going on? And the pain was still there. So I had like suddenly painful ankles, joints, like just weird symptoms that I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe because I'm on a keto diet, maybe I'm not having enough sodium. It's like so stupid. But it wasn't until literally like another 3 months into it that I realized something was really wrong. Basically, I ended up with a neurological disorder. I started having weird heart rate issues. You know, I would go like stand up and my heart rate would shoot up to like 160 beats per minute. After being an athlete for my entire life, having like 60 and 57 resting heart rate. It was ridiculous. So yeah, since then I basically am stuck indoors. I can walk my dogs, but I can't do too much else. In fact, some days I still struggle to walk. So my life is pretty boring, right? So my motivation to have Topstep is to actually have some interaction with people as well. To also try and not completely forego my other business, which is the Pro Development Program. Yes, I do sell a course, shock horror, but we are CPD certified. I sort out the CPD certification for the quality purposes and to make sure that we have some sort of a motivation to keep improving the program in light of student questions and stuff. I used to have an IT recruitment company as well. Now that completely went wrong during COVID, so I don't have it anymore. It was just pointless. Everybody went remote. And the whole thing broke down. So, not great, but hey, it's business. Sometimes these things happen, especially during a Black Swan event. I have a software development company where I have 3 people. So I am more on the strategist side. So I don't necessarily sit there and code every day. I do a little bit of coding, but it's not like, I'm the one who comes up with ideas. It's like, this is the setup that we need to be working on. So I would like you to do this, this, and this. And, maybe I'll write like a little basic algorithm, and then they take it away and they improve upon it. They tidy it up because I'm very messy as a coder. And then, a couple of times a week, I have my peeps here on Topstep. I have Jerome on Wednesdays. We used to have Ray on Thursdays, but I think it's a little bit difficult with the VIP. And then he's on Thursdays as well. I think he does the opening call, so I want to, make sure that he sleeps. And then obviously come Wednesdays, Thursdays, and throughout the week, I do the main broadcast every so often. I got to chat to people, You know, that is, you know, I'm joking with Eddie the other day. I was joking. He was like, any plans for the weekend? And I was like, this is it. And it was got a part joke. But yeah, so to me, it's a great way to keep in touch with the world and to make my world a little less small, if it makes sense. And yeah, I'm just very grateful that my Topstep has given me this opportunity to hang with you and to still, you know, be partly functional. So probably not the story you wanted to hear, but there it is. And I know that I generally look pretty presentable, but trust me, this is, you know, you see me doing like 90 minutes here. You don't see me on oxygen right after this, looking like I'm dying with my eye mask and just going. It's not that bad every day. I would say I have gotten to a point where I think I'm recovering. I still have bad days, but I have more good days. But that doesn't mean that now I can go running, right? It means that I'm not going to crash going up the stairs or down the stairs, which is what I did. Yeah. Yeah, shingles is horrible, man. Awful. Tocino says, hi, dear. Close family member just been admitted to the ICU. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, man. Will trading and journaling my emotions be a healthy distraction? Don't have an interest in anything right now. Or I could just go to work. You know what? Distraction is a definite yes. If you can go for a walk as well, some fresh air helps with that. And yeah, putting down all of your emotions on, in a journal rather than keeping it inside is a much healthier thing. You know, whenever you keep something inside, it's it just creates stress, elevated cortisol. It's not a good thing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sunshine if you can handle it. Yeah, good nutritious food. Creatine, you know what? I've read some new studies on creatine. It's not all that it's worked out to be, because I used it before. It kind of made me a little bit puffy. And to be honest, the biggest thing that made a change in my muscle mass was nitric oxide supplements. You know? Like high volume from PE Science. That was a pretty good one. I got like shoulder caps when I was working out for the first time in my life. Is there a long-term prognosis for the vax damage? They have no idea what myalgic encephalomyelitis really is, or like there are theories, but no treatment. Welcome to my life. So they know that it's something to do with it's a very complex disorder. So they know there's something to do with the brain. There's been signs that some of us have reduced gray matter. So, you know, that's another thing. There's signs that some people recover, but usually it's like earlier in the disease. There are some people who think it's a vagus nerve disorder. There's some people who say that it's a energy shunt disorder, where your body after the infection goes into this thing where it shuffles energy because it kind of creates the fuel cell, which is called ATP, and then I'm going to nerd out on you now, and then instead of going through the normal energy pathways to create the fuel and get to mitochondria, it just goes into a sieve that is created to drown out the intruder. So some people say that system never switches off for some reason in us. So yeah, they don't know. They don't have treatment. You go to a doctor and you explain all your symptoms, and they just either gaslight you, which is my experience, or they just look at you and go, interesting. It's like, yeah, thanks, man. They offered me antidepressants, and I said, do I even look like I'm depressed to you? Are you sure it's not Lyme disease? Yes, I was tested. I was never bitten by a tick. One of the first things, I have a couple of scientists that are based in Canada and US. So they are patients, and they're also researchers. they had high-flying careers before they got hit with the same disease or similar disease, because it could come after an injury or an infection. There's always a catalyst. They actually, before I did their protocol, which brought me up from being bedridden 23/7, they made us do tests. So I had to do mucosal array 14 by Cyrex as one of them, and like a couple of other things, just to make sure that we don't have any active viruses, like EBV being one of them as well. It's mono, so Epstein-Barr virus. If you've ever had that, that gets reactivated with a lot of vax injuries, COVID and stuff. So no Lyme disease, no nothing, just like standard sort of chicken pox, but it wasn't active at the time, so yeah. And please, chat, can we just not do the whole thing where you are imparting advice to a chronically ill person? Do not think for a second that we haven't looked down all of the avenues. I've been sick for 3 years, okay? So just don't do that. This is one of the reasons why I don't like talking about it. People are like, have you tried turmeric? It's like, have you tried drinking more water? Yes, I have. Like, shock horror. Have you tried thinking yourself well? Yes, I have. It doesn't work. No headaches. No, headaches not a thing. All right, so it doesn't seem like I'm getting my setup here. I'm looking for shorts, obviously. A little bit of a wick here, but this is very strong. I don't really want to go against it, at least not until some time has gone by. So I would, at the very least, want to see another kind of 90 minutes of this not going anywhere and then reversing. There is a level. It's average session range high. Gold setups, I have no gold setups. I am... And gold, again, to me, because I look for big moves, it wouldn't be... Bruno is quite amused. If a level breaks through multiple times, is it then invalid? Depends whether you have wicks around it or not. So if it keeps kind of going through VWAP, then reclaiming, going through, reclaiming, going through, I would then look for a resolution to the opposite side, whatever you're trying to do with that level. But generally, multiple breaks with increasing volume at the site is not a good thing if you're going to reverse from that level, right? In that case, I would look for a break and maybe a retest and then going with the break. But yeah. Steve Witt says, hi, the volume seems to have come out of gold into copper and silver. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing here. But I am still looking at the larger time frame picture. We have 5 days of overlapping distribution curves, overlapping values from COMEX. Usually what I've been seeing is that it tries to go higher in London and then COMEX comes and goes, where do you think you're going? So we're going to see whether that happens today. Yesterday I got a decent short out of it, but it came pretty late. So I'm guessing today we might see the same thing. Yeah. Daniel Orchard says, hi D, I'm considering getting level 2 data from Topstep for the dome. Is it worth it? That's a loaded question. So some people find it useful. Other people find that it's completely information overload and they don't need it. You have to ask yourself, how do you trade? Are you currently having success just with price action? If not, and if you find that you're wrong a lot and you can't make it seem obvious, maybe try level 2 data, but then I would maybe also go down bookmap. Although again, bookmap is a information overload. Some people love it, other people hate it. So I can't tell you that for yourself. You have to try it, get the data for a month, see whether you get any extra detail from it. The way I like to use Dome and time and sales, which are kind of smushed in bookmap together, so that helps, is to look at whether there's an imbalance on the dome. So that'll be the first steps. It's like, is any one side having a sticky outy area? Like literally in the simplest terms. Is there one price that has a lot more orders than everything else around it? And they're an eyesore, right? Then look at whether the volume is on the short or long side. Now, this is very discretionary, right? To me right now, it looks like there's quite a lot of sellers. But if I kind of filter it out to bigger players, I will see that most of them were long. However, for the sake of seeing the real-time, sellers and buyers and how much speed and velocity they're plowing into the market, I would say that we're mainly short now. So is that maybe a sign that the average session range high will get reclaimed? Right now we're still above it. So I really needed to go under 94.40 and then to also get the volume increase to the downside. But I'm not going to see that on a 30-minute chart because obviously we have just one big candle. So we look at that on, or I look at that, who's we? I look at that on the lower microstructure change. So can I see some sort of a break to the downside? Right now this still looks a little bit flag patterny to me, so I'm not very keen. The drop failed to go below the 90 MA ribbon, which I'm using on a 2-minute chart here. Copper doesn't need a 100-tick chart. Something that's much faster might need a 100-tick, but 2 minutes is actually more representative of what is happening with a bit of time added into it. So yeah, I would like it to reclaim average session range high. Then maybe we're going to have something, but I'm not going to have necessarily price action on anything apart from very low time frames. Why? Because the price that just the candle that just came up to hit the ASR and overshoot it was massive, right? So it's like, how can we have a reversal? Well, you need time, right? You need smaller candles and then a resolution of either a consolidation or maybe a continuation higher, in which case, I wait another day. So yeah. Topstep has this indicator, the Blatek. I can assure you that Topstep doesn't have the indicator because Blatek is my company. And we haven't created anything for Topstep X yet. So if somebody's claiming their Blatek on TradingView or somewhere, that ain't true. Man, so many scammers popping up. The other day, one of my traders who's been there for a long time, he points me to a Facebook message that he received from a Deeyana Angelo with my Twitter profile pic. And on Facebook, I have like friends and stuff. Like I don't have just myself. I'm certainly not going to be using, posy pictures for my Facebook. And he was like, "Is this you?" And I was like, "Oh, hell no." Because as if I would be going around Facebook. Like I don't DM people unless I tell somebody on a public forum that I'm going to DM them. So just assume it isn't me. Can I look at DAX? Yes, I can. Let's find DAX first for the end of the session. Okay, inside bars, great. Let's have a look at DAX from a bird's eye view. Hold on, let me delete these objects because they're just messy. Right, this looks long to me from a weekly chart, but we've gone over the 4-week POC on the volume profile. That can be a sign of strength. Where is the nearest supply? All the way up there, but the quartile high. So that's basically a point where the price is retraced enough for the institutions to notice. They're like, hey, this is now maybe risk to the downside, but it is an equity index, so let's take that with a pinch of salt. Decent pinch of salt. Daily chart, same swing. Okay, so not much to glean from here. Oh God, 4-hour chart looks disgusting. Look at it. Overlapping candles. That's never a sign of an easy day. So right now, I mean, you would need to see some really big commitment above this yesterday's high. If that doesn't happen, I will be looking to fade it. Let's just see what the options are doing. All right, so we have some gamma walls areas. So core resistance and gamma wall at 22,600. So yes, if they're gonna go long, 22,600 needs to break and price needs to hold above it. Now with equities, what typically happens is that even if they break it, especially DAX, there is at least one opportunity for you to get back in. So don't rush. So my first hypo would be that we don't go higher. Okay, so that we smack into the core resistance and gamma wall and we reverse. We already have a neutral day on our hands for London. So if you look at just the profile, TPO profile, blue is extension of the initial balance, right? So extension lower with excess, extension higher with more excess. We also opened inside value. We're now popping above the value area, but that doesn't mean strength. To me, if we have a very strong level above it, it actually means a responsive activity trade. Okay, so it means that we basically try to, or we, who's we? The wizards. Market makers, right? As soon as somebody tries to take it out of the area, they will bring it back in, the elastic band effect, right? So until that changes, I would probably be looking for shorts to VWAP, right? Alternative hypo is that we break through the core resistance and then we hold above it with quite some volume. Then we have a continuation possibility. So breakaway or range trade, two hypos. Polar opposites. Trading is kind of like conditional logic to me. It's all about conditional, if else, right? If we do this, else we do this, right? That's why it's like, oh, D says it's either going to go short or long. Well, yeah, duh, because there's, no third option, right? So you want to have, especially on an inside day and a neutral day time, you need to have like a, one hypothesis that speaks to what you're already seeing, right? Range bound day. But then another hypothesis in case you're wrong and it does go into a breakout. And you need to have levels to fall back on it. So it seems like we're going in. I might do a range bound trade here. I don't have my my other platform open at the moment. So I need to do that once I'm off the stream. But yeah, it looks like maybe some range bound action is in favor. Very spiky, very inside bar. This is not really conducive to any kind of breakout trades. Usually if you're going to do a breakout trade, so let's find a good example. So here's a breakout trade that starts off building steam, right? And it breaks higher, then retests VWAP and continues going upside haphazardly into the next session. So what you want to see is this. Here's another one, cleaner though, with bigger move. You want to see it building steam ahead of the level. That's what brings the break, this kind of velocity or volume that's just kind of stacking on as the time goes by. But they usually start like not at the level, they usually start away from it and then build, right? And then you have enough speed, velocity, and legs. So they build long legs so that the stride could be bigger. And that's how you get a break of the level. So anytime I'm approaching an area with clean price action that just kind of keeps stair-stepping higher effectively, I'm always careful of shorting. Always careful of shorting against that. Because it could, that could happen. All right. I think we are coming to the end. So let's take a couple more questions. Pi says, I need a good product completely opposite ES, but also as volatile. Try gasoline futures. That's a riot. Gasoline futures are kind of like the NQ of energies. So a little less crazy, slightly less crazy. but equally spazzy. So if you're after that, try RB, RBob, or Robert, as we like to call them. So this ASR high looks like it's gonna go into reclaim and bounce. So let's of course, for the end of the stream, if I see this climbing back over this 90 MA on a 2-minute chart, that would be my long, because we failed to go below ASR high. So that's triggering the hypo of a breakout now. And we'll see whether I can get that. But it's not going to be on this stream because we're coming to an end of hanging out together for today. Tomorrow we're going to have Jerome here with us, hopefully again. And we are going to talk some neuroscience. Him and no, I'm not going to do analysis on NQ. For that, tune into the main broadcast when they talk about NQ for 8 hours, man. So I ain't talking about it here. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Check out our Discord. That is where all of our VIP sessions are being done, and also where the 150k subscribers giveaway sessions are being done. I'm doing another one today. So if you are, if you've chosen me as your coach, I will see you there. And I've got another session, another I'm losing the plot at this point. Another forum for you. So this is a casting call forum. If you want to come and say hi, if you want to come do some trading, fill out that form. Somebody will get back to you. You may need to create a video. And then we'll come and meet you. That's how Paul H. got to be here. That's how most of the people you see as guests on TopstepTV, that's how they got to be on Topstep. So let's try long, but I'm going to change this to image G, and then use, in this case, a very tight stop. Why? Because I don't want it going all the way down below the average session range high, and that's smacking me in the face. But yeah, this is the trade. I'm not seeing my shorts, so I'm just staying objective and going with what I am seeing. The fact that we've managed to reclaim ASR, and now maybe it's doing what gold likes to do, so we'll see. But that's it. If I can't make this happen in 16 ticks, I'm going to be losing a whole $100, so we can handle that. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. This has been the Euro Trade. I'm Marcus Stalker D. I will see you tomorrow for the Euro Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.